If you want to see your name at the beginning of all of our videos, as well as see exclusive content here on the homestead, please feel free to join our Patreon. Memberships start off at just $1 a month. And as always, thank you for your support.
So you know how most people dream about like having tests and forgetting about them or showing up naked to like work? Nah, I had a dream last night that I went to show. I brought 3 silver foxes. They were all junior does, but somehow a fourth appeared that was a senior buck that they called a doe because he had a split penis. Like, bad enough to where the judge was like, no, this is a doe. And I'm like, no, it's a buck. And then we discovered on table he had that issue. And then halfway into the show and getting weights on those silver foxes, I realized I forgot all of my mini Rex. So I had to get my magic friend to go pick them up for me and drop them off in like the cage systems. Except for he dropped off 3 mini Rex does, 2 casters, and a broken caster. So I don't know if that was supposed to be Velma, Cyrax, and freaking the older doe I have. It's too early, my brain isn't working. Sadie's her name. Or if they were supposed to be someone else, because I didn't get far enough into the dream to figure out if they were juniors or seniors in my brain. And then the judge said that one of my junior silver foxes was underweight and it was a 2-point deduction. That's not how shows work. If your animal is underweight, you get DQ'd. And then, apparently, I didn't tattoo an ear, and he's like, 4-point deduction. It's like, that's not how this works! That's not how any of this works. That's not how shows work. So, yeah, my brain last night was on something. And I can't tell if I'm excited for this show or nervous for this show, considering my brain crafted an entire show for myself in a dream. So yeah, that's the kind of nonsense I think about and dream about. So I just got off my live and I have a question for my rabbit people. How many of you actually show fur classes? Like, I don't, and I don't necessarily understand how they work or the rules or anything. Like, I've read through the requirements before when it comes to like the ARBA, but it doesn't necessarily mean I understand them. And I very, very rarely actually see anyone in the fur class. So does somebody want to like pop down in my comments to like talk about it who like actually actively shows fur class to explain it? Or like duet/stitch me please? Because I'm a confirmation person. I pay the judges to hurt my feelings and tell me how horrible my lines are. And is it the same thing for fur class, only fur, or like what? So I personally don't cull based on large litters. I completely understand why some meat breeders do this, and I've seen it more common with breeders who do it when the numbers are higher than 10. But something I do cull for within the nest box is peanuts in my mini Rex. And remember, when we talk about peanuts, we're talking about the double dwarf gene. True peanuts, a fatality within the genetic structure. I cull that as soon as I see it within a litter. Now, if I personally cull something out like that, I will put it in the notes. I will put on, let's say it's today, December 1st, 2022, 2 kits culled for being peanuts. So if the doe had 10 kits originally, I culled out 2, now she has 8. She still has a 100% success rate when I go in and cull those 2 peanuts. Because it's not the doe's fault that that happened. That all has to do with barn management. Both the peanuts being produced because I bred together 2 true dwarfs, and also me eliminating those 2 animals because they are non-viable. That is by no means the doe's fault and is completely my own. So if and when I get a peanut again, I will happily show it compared to another kit. With that being said, I shouldn't have a peanut for a very, very long time. And the reason behind this is I shouldn't get a double dwarf. The only way to get a double dwarf is to breed 2 true dwarfs together. So if we look at Velma here, she is a true dwarf. She is very petite in size, she has the very small ears and head, and the very narrow face. She is very petite and small. Enter my breeding buck. You all know him and love him. This is Strawberry. Strawberry is a false dwarf. He has a very long, broad face with equivalent ears. He's also chunky as heck and does not carry a dwarf gene. And because he is a false dwarf, he doesn't carry that gene to create a double dwarf. And I do this quite often in my breeding program, where I like to breed false dwarfs to dwarfs to not get peanuts. Now, that does mean that I do create a bunch of false dwarfs, but that just means extra food in my freezer. So what I like to do is I like to add opposing genes together. I don't like breeding together two true dwarfs. But if and when I do again, I will be happy to show the difference. If we were talking about true dwarfs being peanuts, meaning they hold the double dwarf gene, you're not going to have them survive. Most die within the first few days of birth, but all will die before adulthood. The oldest I've ever seen a peanut survive is a couple weeks. And that's because they're essentially missing things that they're supposed to have. A lot of times it's a kidney or a liver. Things they need to properly function but just don't have because of this gene. And because of this, most breeders cull in the nest box. And that's a whole ethical debate in the rabbit community itself. Is it more ethical to cull in the nest box or let it live? I personally cull in the nest box. What makes Strawberry a false dwarf? A false dwarf, in essence, is a dwarf breed rabbit that just doesn't carry the dwarf gene. And there are a few key physical attributes that we look for to ensure that we have a false dwarf. For one, the overall size of the animal is a dead giveaway. Most mini Rex rabbits sit between 3 and 4-ish pounds. This big hunker is normally around 5 pounds. And the lowest I have gotten him so far is 4 pounds 12 ounces. I'm really trying to get him down to show weight, but I don't think it's going to happen. There's the broad skull. When it comes to the skull shape, they more represent what a Rex would look like compared to a dwarf skull. So if we look at Strawberry's head, compare that, compared to Lizzie's skull. It's the same skull, it's just Lizzie's is a bit larger, but it still has that broad longness. Compare that now to Cyrax. The dainty ears, the very short snout, and very thin head. But a true indicator onto whether or not a dwarf rabbit carries a dwarf gene is to do a test breeding. If you have a false dwarf produce peanuts, then it isn't a false dwarf. So what you really want to do is you want to take your physical attributes, compare them to a test breeding. And that's how you find out if something is a false dwarf and if they do not carry that dwarf gene. So from the video you saw, I could definitely see why you'd think that there was feces in the cage. It's just angulation, because I have these drip pans underneath the cages, and if you're not at the right angle, you can't see the space. So the rabbits sit on this wire. It's 16 gauge wire, a 1/2 inch by 1 inch. It does really well with the rabbits. And because fecal matter and urine fall all the way through, we don't have to worry about any issues when it comes to urine scalding. But I just pull the pans once a week, dump them out, and we're good to go. And the pans get sanitized once every about quarter. And what I'll do is I'll spray them down with a hose. I will just scrub them down with bleach, and we're good to go. It's a little harder to do that in the winter because things freeze, but it's the same process. And then the cages themselves get wiped down with, depending on the time of week, a different kind of cleaning solution. I do alcohol-based, ammonia-based, bleach-based, all kinds of bases depending on my mood and my rotation. And all of my cages in the barn are just a variation of wire cage and catch. Some of mine have plastic catches, others have metal catches, all the same all the way around. No one ever sits in their own fecal matter or urine. So I answered you in comments, but I figured this is a really interesting subject for a lot of people, considering that a lot of people don't know that we do tattoo our rabbits. So in order to show your rabbits, they must have a tattoo in the left ear. It can consist of any letters or numbers, as long as it's nothing like vulgar. The left ear is for basic identification within the barn. The right ear is for registration. And then also tattooing ensures that we have proper identification of our rabbits. Now, when we tattoo, we wrap these guys up in a towel and we hit them with a numbing spray. It's very quick, very easy, and these guys are normally asleep as we are tattooing. So it's a very easy process, not very dramatic. And I have nicked my fingers on quite a few occasions. If you look at my hands right now, they are covered in ink. And I wouldn't really describe the sensation as pain, it's more annoying. And to put it in perspective, I myself have 5 tattoos. And the needles on my tattoo pen are so small, and there's only like 2 needles on the pen itself, that it's not really a big deal. But tattooing is very important when it comes to management of your barn and keeping everybody straight. Just got to the rabbit show with 45 minutes to spare. I didn't think we were gonna get here in time, but I have everything ready and I'm excited, like super excited. Just got home. I've been marinating on all of the show notes because I take time to think things through and kind of decide where we're going from here and what the judges have to say. And this video is just going to focus on the good, and my next video is going to focus on the bad. So first off, let's talk about my mini Rex. Starting off with Velma. Velma is my solid caster out of Sadie and Strawberry. Little girl did very well. And there were a lot of casters there today. I was very happy about that. But she took a best of group, best of variety, and overall did really well. The judges' notes were pretty simple in that she had a very strong shoulder, which we all know how hard shoulders are to perfect, and that she sloped off a little bit on the hind end, and that the judge would like to see more conditioning and covering over the spine, which she's a junior, she has time to fill in. And then it was also mentioned she had a beautiful coat with density, but they would like to see more ring definition, in that the colors were a little muddy and they were a little lemony, and that they were kind of yellow in some spots, and they want to see them a little more crisp. Very excited to take that doe to the next step as we get her to a senior age and weight. The star of the show, though, was Cyrax. My daughter took her into a youth show, and for those of you who don't know, Cyrax is my broken caster. This little broken caster right here. She got a best opposite. So basically, there was a buck that placed against her, and she got the place underneath. Cyrax placed amazingly. But the notes for this doe were that, again, she had a very strong shoulder, and the judge said that he absolutely adored her coloring. He said that her rufous was outstanding, nice dark, and that her ring definition was very crisp. He said from a standpoint of a caster, just beautiful. Negative notes on this doe were that she just needed a little bit more flesh condition, and that would have won her the show. He just wanted to see a bit more meat over the hind quarter. But he said overall, a very balanced, compact doe. But as many of you know, mini Rex are my specialty. And it's something I've been working on for a very long time, and this was my off-season stock, so I could have a lot better as the season progresses. This is kind of what I threw together on last minute. But with that being said, out of the 4 rabbits that I took, these 2 did absolutely fantastic. Welcome to the wonderful world of show rabbits where we are nitpicking. I have gotten to the phase in my caster lines that it is just the smallest little things that the judges don't like. So when we talk about colors and casters, there are all kinds of weird things that they want you to fix. So for instance, this is Sadie. She doesn't have the correct rufous, meaning she's not black enough on that very top ticking. So in order to fix that, we breed her to a black-based rabbit such as Strawberry, which gets you these beautiful girls. As you can see, the ticking has been resolved. They're nice and dark on that top coat. Now, when it came to competition yesterday, the judges absolutely loved this one's color, but with this one, they mentioned she's a little too lemony, and her ring definition is not defined enough. Now, normally when we get to this phase, we want to breed caster to caster, and we just want to breed animals that have the best ring lines to each other. I currently don't have a caster buck, but in theory, what I should do is if I was only focusing on ring color, I would remove this one from my breeding program and only stick with this little girl right here. That being said, their type is both too good. So I would rather just keep both of them and work on my ring lines in the next generation when I get a good son out of one of these guys that has better ring definition. So when they say more crisp, what they mean is the definition from one layer to the next on the caster's coat. So when you blow on the coat like I did with the Cyrax, there's these circles of guard hairs and mid-shaft hairs to lower undercoat hairs that have different colors. And what they're asking for in definement is a definition between those colors and that they don't spread together. So it's kind of like you get with the Dutch rabbits where they want those crisp lines. Same thing here. I'm going to breed these guys back to Strawberry, and I'm hoping that won't make them too dark on the top coat. Or what I'll do is I'll take Strawberry, breed him to Sadie, get another caster out of him, and might do a full sibling pairing. What I can't do though is take that little lynx, breed it to a caster, and then breed it to these guys because it'll mess up my Rufus and it'll put too much gray in the coat. I also don't want to breed any reds into these lines, and I definitely most certainly want to stay away from chocolates. Because if I breed a chocolate into the line, I could get the wrong colors on the top coat, get rid of that Rufus, and it could do some muddling in my blue. So yeah, there's a lot when it comes to color in these guys, but they did excellent at show yesterday. So this is a video from yesterday's show where we have all of our silver foxes lined up for judging, and they are split up into groups. And they are split up into different groups. So basically the way a show works is you put your rabbits into those temporary cages so the judge has easy access to pull them out and evaluate them. For our silver foxes, we currently have 2 approved colors. We have blacks and we have chocolates. So that's each color group. But within these groupings, we have junior does, junior bucks, intermediate does, intermediate bucks, then we have senior does and senior bucks. And those are all based both in weight and in age. And each breed is different when it comes to this ruling. So a judge will judge these groups separately and then together. So a judge will go over all of the junior does and pick the best junior doe. And then that best junior doe gets put to the side while they pick out the best junior buck, intermediate doe, senior doe, and senior buck. So in all, we will have 6 best of categories. And then those 6 will go up against the best that were picked out of the chocolate for the same categories. So 12 animals altogether in theory, if all the categories have been filled. And then those 12 rabbits will be judged together to get both the best of breed and the best opposite. Let's say the best animal is a senior buck. The best opposite has to be a doe. Then once that judging is over and you get your nice little tags or presents or just congratulations, the best of breed is kind of put off to the side and has to wait through the entire show till the end. And then what they'll do is they will take the best of breed from every single breed of show and have the judge look it over. And they will choose the best of show from all of the best of breeds. Now, in this show, we had 3 shows going on. There was show A, B, and C. And for each show, there were 2 judges running it, I do believe. So in theory, that day, there were 3 best of shows. Because even though the event is together, the judges are separate. Although it's really fun to watch judges go around and ask each other opinions. Especially we had one judge that went over and was like, hey, do these nails look too light to you? I don't want to be rude. Like, I think these nails are too light. What do you think? Yeah, bro, those nails are too light. Or earlier in the day, we had one judge, they took a mini Rex over to another judge and they were like, hey, does this look like a split penis to you? And the other judge was like, ooh, yeah, that's a split penis. So even though the shows are separate, the judges do talk to one another. But I do love shows and they are just fantastic. So we talked about the good of the show, now we can talk about the bad. Before we preference this, I want to say that I brought this doe knowing she would be DQ'd out of every single class. She has a white spot on her nose. But I think that she'll be beneficial to the program, and I'm thinking that's just a random white spot gene. But I won't know until I breed her and try her out, but before I wanted to keep her for longer to try her out, I wanted third-party opinions, so I took her to show. And as predicted, she got disqualified from every single class. Turned into quite the running joke. And then she also went into one of the youth events called Find the Disqualification, where the kids had to go and figure out why a rabbit was disqualified, and she stumped quite a few kids because they didn't really understand how the silver gene worked, and why that off-white spot might be a DQ and as to why, so it was a great learning opportunity. So Mercury really did a great job at show. She was very well behaved on the table. Her notes were that she has a really nice head and ears and a great shoulder, and she needs to fill out in the loin a bit more. But she had a great depth, and as long as that loin fills in a little bit more with age, because this is a junior, she'll probably be a great addition to a breeding program. And they really liked her fur and said it had nice grip, which, as y'all know, is an improvement because my goal right now in my lines is to improve the fur type. So the goal is, with that confirmation from outside parties that she has good type, she's going to be bred to Wiley and Zeus at some point. So I'm very excited to have her in the breeding program. Miss Cookie! Hey, BB. Alright, so, Champagne project is coming to a halt. Talk to a champagne breeder, talk to multiple judges. Cookie should be white by now. And champagne breeder I talked to, he was amazing. I loved talking to him, so knowledgeable, especially as I've never actually met somebody who knows how to properly breed champagnes and specializes in it. His babies start silvering out around 4 weeks and finish out between 8 and 10 weeks. And he asked me where my lines are from, and when I said New York, he was like, ah. Apparently there's a breeder on the East Coast that is using New Zealand blacks to improve their lines. And this is what a throwback of lines like that causes. So he gave me some numbers to call to get stock that wouldn't be mixed with anything else and throwing this kind of thing. But I'm looking at scrapping this entire champagne line. But on a bright side, all the judges loved Cookie's type. They said they wish she was the right color because she had a strong body overall and just a gorgeous high point. So that was disappointing. I can't find a picture of Lizzie or Emma, so we're just going to stare at this random mini Rex. So it depends on what I am trying to breed for. If I am trying to breed for otters, I try to just breed otter to otter, or their correlating color. Meaning if I have a black otter, I either want to breed it to a black or blue otter, or I want to breed it to a black or blue self. Or if I have a chocolate otter, I would want to breed it to a chocolate otter, a lilac otter, or a chocolate self or a lilac self. Kind of want to stay in the same color family and idea. But if I'm focusing on something else, like let's say I don't care if I get otters, it depends on what the other parent is. So if I want to breed for a castor or a chinchilla against an otter, I'm not focusing necessarily on getting an otter. The big thing that I was taught by one of my mentors when it comes to breeding is to just try to stay in the same color family unless you are going for a specific thing. So for instance, when it comes to castors, I was always warned to stay away from chocolates and lilacs and to stay away from anything shaded or that could add gray to the butt. I have all kinds of really arbitrary color rules for breeding things, and some of them are kind of funny. But a lot of it has to do with like the minuscule things, such as are we going to get mismatching eye and toenail color or random white spots, or inefficient ring colors and lines.